Okay. Alrighty. Okay. Right, I actually don't know what expanded cards I have. So first things first. Okay. Ryan, evening. Milky Jake, how you doing? Welcome in here. Okay, I want to take a look at... I think that was the main thing I needed to check before. Expanded is easy clap, just play Roxy Chomp. Ooh. So I haven't played Expanded in literal years, and my teammate Bert won an Expanded event like 2 weeks ago, so I'm hoping he can give me a bit of a rundown on today's stream of what is what in the Expanded format. It's not going to be a huge long stream. I have a lot of stuff to do, so I don't think I'm going to be playing too many games or anything tonight. I think it will just be a chat with me and Bert, but I wanted to stream it because obviously Bert's a very, very intelligent person. He's very good at the game, so getting some insight from good players is always a great, a great thing to do, I think. So any assistance that he can give you guys as well, hopefully it'll be beneficial for all. So we're going to call him in just under 5 minutes, and basically we're just going to look through some lists. Look at the past 2 Limitless Weeklies. The past 2 Limitless Weeklies have been in the Expanded format. So we're going to go through some of those lists, and he's going to kind of tell me about what different decks are in the meta and that kind of thing, and hopefully give me a bit of insight into the list that he won with a couple of weeks ago. He played Darkrai Dragons to a first place finish at the last Limitless Weekly, finishing with an 11-0 record, which is obviously crazy impressive. So, yeah, I'm pretty excited to have a chat with him in a few moments' time. Making sure everything's all working. So yeah, I don't know how long the stream will be. We may be chatting for hours, we may only be chatting for an hour or so, I don't really know, but I'm just going to kind of go with the flow and see what happens. So yeah, give him a call and we will get things going once the Once the cars outside my room have disappeared. Yeah, I'm looking forward to trying out some Expanded though. Expanded is... It's been a long time. Sweet, he's good to go. Alrighty. Hello?
Hello.
Hello. Long time no chat.
That's true. That's true. How are you doing?
Not bad, thank you. It's good. It's good feeling excited about Pokemon again, I must admit. So I'm pretty pleased with
I know
that.
the feeling. I know the feeling.
Yourself, you good?
Yeah, I'm good as well. Yeah,
Good. Glad
my
to
my
hear.
excitement for Pokemon started like a few weeks earlier, but I kind of know what you're going through.
Creeping back in now. Yeah, it's weird. And
Creeping back in.
I really wasn't that fussed when I saw that this was expanded this week. I was like, oh, I kind of don't want to. I kind of don't want to play. But then obviously I remembered what you and Sandra had both said about it just being genuinely like an enjoyable experience. So I'm actually really looking forward to this Friday, seeing how the format is. It's been God knows. I didn't go to the expanded regional, so it's been. I played in an expanded League Cup actually, just after ADP was released. That was the last time I played expanded, and before then it was literal years. So it's gonna be interesting taking a dive into expanded again.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it was the same for me. Like, I also didn't play the regionals in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the last one before that was like a regional in 2015-16 I played, either in the Netherlands or like an Arena Cup in Bochum.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been ages since I actually played Expanded as well, like prior to my first of the 3 Limitless Expanded events I've played.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I must admit I like that they're. Again, initially I was also a bit because obviously the second major is expanded, and I was like, oh,
Oh yeah.
gotta learn a new format. But it's good at I guess they're putting the little events on first because that'll hopefully give me a bit of a taste of what to expect. Because I think I really enjoyed the major this week. It's been a long time since I've. Well, there's like the best of one events are good for in terms of how quickly they're done and that kind of thing. But there was something really enjoyable about playing a 2-day event and it being best of 3 and feeling like a regional again this weekend. It was cool.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I assume making data is also a great feeling.
Oh yeah, it was. I mean, I feel like I haven't really played Pokemon for about 6 months before this week.
Yeah.
It was nice to I guess do well again. And it's I seem to. I've never ever considered myself a Pika player, but the 3 times I've made day 2 in Limitless events, it's all been with Pika decks. So maybe Pika is my calling for expanded as well, considering it gets
Could be
a boatload of stuff. But yeah, so in my mind, I've got the standings from weeks 14 and 15 open. I was thinking maybe we could just go through some of the different archetypes, at least just quickly, like I say, a few of the different ones, and then maybe a little bit of a deeper dive on your list, just because you have a bit more insight on that one, I guess.
Sure.
But yeah, I was going to start with week 14. It looks like Pika won that week. Let me switch over so people can see what we're looking at. But yeah, it looks like Pika won that week, so Pika's still doing well in expanded as well as standard by the looks of it.
Yeah. I think just going back to just getting into the expanded format, I think one of the big advantages for like someone like you who isn't too familiar with it is that you still like there's an open deck list, so you still get some time and get to look like, okay, what's my opponent playing? What are they trying to do?
Yeah.
You see all the tricks and tips of like what decks can actually do.
Yeah.
So you just have to get a feeling for what kind of the speed is of the format and like how much of the stuff they want to do they can actually do in their turn, right?
Yeah, because I imagine because the card pool is so much bigger, I would imagine there's a lot more kind of strange combos. So having open deck lists is going to be, I guess, really helpful in terms of noticing little tech Pokemon or tech like enhanced hammers or stuff like that, just to kind of keep your kind of head and game plan, I guess, aware of ahead of time. Obviously, it's a bit different compared to normal tournaments where it's not open deck list. So yeah, I think the open deck list thing would definitely be really useful.
Yeah,
So yeah,
for
I
sure.
can see it being good with like I say, such a massive card pool as well. I would imagine there's a lot of... Oh, there's a Clefairy in this first list. Let's go.
Yeah, Clefairy, you actually see that in a lot of Pika lists. It's the ADP counter.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Because, I mean, with 3 energies, you can just copy the Ray attack and just Oko ADP, which is really good for Pika.
Yeah. And of course you've got elixirs, you've got all of this good stuff to be able to turbo turbo.
So you should just, like, that's the speed of Expanded. You should just kind of be expecting to hit full blitz turn 1.
Yeah.
I think it's probably maybe 2 years ago, Pika run like odds of hitting full blitz, so maybe like 70%-ish. But it's definitely really high because you have a lot of switching outs. You have both Thunder Mountain, Coco, and Max Elixir.
Yeah,
plus the draw of the Den and Crobat.
Yeah, I was going to say how often. So yes, 70%. That looks super feasible. You've got so much raw draw power. Is insane.
It's actually kind of the same as in Standard. The amount of draw power, right? You just have better trainers.
It's just the trainers and arguably, I guess, N and Guzma are upgrades to like Mani and Boss in general. But yeah,
exactly.
I can see. Honestly, looking at this kind of trainer list, it's like there's a couple of standout things like Elixir, Electro Power, maybe Ultra Ball, VS Seeker. But in general, it's not that far off. You've got 7 or 8 ball searchy type cards. You've got a thinner support account, but you've got VS Seekers, so it kind of makes itself the same sort of thing.
Exactly.
It looks pretty similar. And in my mind, Pika, I think it looks like one of the easier pick up and play kind of decks, especially coming from a Standard background, just because you've got full. I mean, looking at this deck list, you can see basically Pika is the main attacker, except for a couple of Vikavolts here and there, and in general the rest are kind of just tech attackers in a lot of scenarios. So it's going to be the same as a lot of standard Pikas. You're just gunning for turn 1 full blitz, and I would imagine your success is fairly high, especially with you also got like comp search as well, of course, to be able to just find the missing the Thunder Mountain or the Coco or anything like that. So yeah, I think Pika is probably one of the, in my mind, it seems like it would be one of the easiest decks to be able to just pick up and play with lack of an expanded background, just because the strategies seem super similar.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, you've been playing for a long time, so you know what all these cards do anyways. So
that's something that I can see being a bit of a put off for some people who have never played expanded before, especially with the way the hobby's grown over the past year. I can see it being quite intimidating.
And it can be hard to get the cards, I think, especially Computer Search is a hard card to get. Obviously Beach, but not a lot of decks run Beach in Expanded. Like only, I think, decks like Shocklock or other control decks would run it.
Yeah.
So you're pretty fine without Beach. And you can even, there are still even plenty of decks that don't play Computer Search. Like my deck, for example, plays Dowsing Machine.
Okay, they're considerably cheaper, aren't they?
Yeah, I think so, but it's still a really good card, and I think even in this deck you could switch Computer Search for Dowsing Machine and it would still be decent.
Yeah, I mean you're still getting value out of things like Max Elixir and E-Power, so maybe it's not ideal, but at the same time you're still going to get a lot of value from something like a Dowsing Mech, so that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly.
A couple of more, I guess, specific things that I'm interested in. There's the 3 cards I really want to kind of understand the uses for. The first is double Vikavolt. Is that just for mainly early game paralyzing bolt to try and cripple stuff?
Yeah, I think so, and I think you can because the expanded meta is way more item focused and supporter focused, right? Because of Via Seeker as well. So and plus paralyzing bolt can be really, really strong. And the attack is also much better because you're not limited to 50 damage because you have Electro Power.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So it's actually a kind of a threatening attack as well as just item locking and dealing with small basics, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Makes a lot of sense. Next up is Electros. Electros is another interesting one. Is that for? In my looking at this list, that shouts to me that it's for dealing with stuff that blocks like basic attackers like Pyro, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. I think one of the bigger ones. I never played against it, luckily, but I think is the Rowegg deck,
Oh,
which
with the
plays like
Vileplume?
both Vile Plumes.
Yeah.
So also the Vile Plume that stops basics from attacking, but
Mhm.
Electros is an evolved Pokemon, so you can still attack it.
Okay, that's nice.
And
And
obviously it gets through safeguard stuff as well.
oh yeah, of course, yeah, because there's a lot of there's only one or two attackers that actually don't get blocked by safeguard. You've also got the Clefairy as well, I guess, but that's a lot more of a niche tech if
Mhm.
they don't have any great attacks.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
similar sort of uses for the Stealthy Hood, I guess. Then maybe.
Yeah, maybe someone in chat knows it better, but I can't quite remember what Stealthy Hood is for.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's the only other card that kind of not sticks out to me as important, but maybe I would have to think about the exact. I mean, there will be definitely like some weird niche uses for it, but yeah, that's that will make sense. So, and like we said,
I think
Pika
Stealthy
does.
Hood may also stop Vileplume, but
I think it does, but I can't. Let me read the exact wording.
I think so.
He's done this Pokemon. Done to this Pokemon. There will have been because these cards have both been in standard in the past year. There probably will have been an interaction that, but I can't remember. Someone in chat might know. But yeah, I think like that's ringing a bell. But yeah, this looks super easy to play. It looks like Pika things. It's just
Yeah, you can also take a look at in Limitless 11, the weekly 11. Tord also played it. I don't think the list is too different, although Tord played a Zorora, Raichu, and a Boltund, and he didn't play the Vikavolt.
Okay.
And he didn't
Here
play
it
the
is.
Clefairy, but I think the Clefairy is really good, so you should probably
Yeah, I do. I must admit, I
get
do
an
like the
include.
Clefairy. Okay, so yeah, he's got the Zeraora Bolt and the Choo Choo. But yeah, the trainer list looks pretty similar, to be honest. Oh, Fury Belt's another card. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, Fury Belt's also a really good card. Like, I think before Choice Band used to be a lot better, but now because you have a lot of V Pokemon as well, Choice Band obviously doesn't work against them.
I have seen a couple of lists more recently going back to Muscle Band, which makes a lot of sense just because obviously you get value kind of either way there. A little bit less value against GXs, but in general, like you say, the format is slowly moving more and more V heavy. So
yeah, so I think either Muscle Band or Fury Belt is the better tool. I also play Fury Belt because I think the difference between 10 and 30 is not that relevant in my deck, but we can get to it when we get to my deck.
yeah, that makes sense though. Oh, Rahul with the sub. Thanks so much for the sub, Rahul. Really appreciate it.
What's up, Rahul?
So yeah, Pika looks like a pretty pick up and play kind of deck, and I think that's kind of my super safe pick if I can't get to grips with anything beforehand. So that's
or if you don't have a lot of time to play some games on ladder.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's a good place to start. Next up, it looks like we've got Dragapult Garbodor. Now I've seen a lot of things about Dragapult, various different Dragapult variants. Dragapult Gar, I think, is the one I've seen the most about. Some playing just like the 2/2 Garbatoxin, some playing like this one, more of a 4/4 to be able to use Trash Launch as an attacker as well. I'm pretty interested to see how this shapes up in the meta because obviously Dark is still very high tier ADP. Like Darkrai Dragons, that kind of thing is still a very high tier. So that makes me worry a little bit about Dragapult's place in the meta, but I guess you maybe focus more on the Garbodor side of things just because that deck's kind of very item heavy as well.
Well, I think like if a smart Dark player should not lose to Dragapult, like you can still get enough Dark energy in play to threaten them without using like barely any items. Like let's say maybe you need to use 4, and then you resist, so they still only do 60 damage, right?
Yeah.
You can still 1-hit KO all the Dragapults. So I think this deck has a pretty bad Dark matchup. So like it depends on if you expect Dark a lot. So maybe since in the most recent Limitless tournament, Dragapult isn't too big of a play, but I think people will still play it. I think the theory of the deck is still really strong. Like both Trash Challenge and Garbotoxin obviously very strong. Dragapult is pretty good itself. Like the one bad thing is that it needs 2 energies to attack, and it doesn't run energy acceleration.
Okay, so yeah.
So you're gonna have to charge up in 2 turns.
Yeah.
However, because it has so much HP, the opponent usually has to kind of overcommit, play a lot of items, and that way powering up your Trash Challenge.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it looks. I mean, again, this doesn't look that kind of fancy or anything. It just looks like it's kind of doing what it wants to do. It wants to get Garbatoxin in play, and it wants to power up Dragapult and basically just say 180-ish damage in terms of counters plus raw damage per turn on a 320 HP Pokemon is pretty gross. It doesn't even run any healing or anything. It's just saying, yeah, I'll get knocked out, but by then, like you say, you've overcommitted into this VMAX, and then Garbodors are just going to do what they've always done and just really trade up. So yeah, this list again looks pretty pretty standard in all intents and purposes, really. I assume things like Ranger and stuff, along with ADP also, you've got, if you're seeing like heavy Vikavolt lines, that kind of thing, that you can always use it to get around those kind of item locky style things as well, which is cool.
Yes, I think Ranger usually is the ADP counter, and I think like against Dark-Eyed Dragons, you still lose if you play Ranger, but against like Zacian ADP, which is also a deck, it could swing the matchup in your favor. I think maybe the main draw of this deck is that it can, like maybe not against the other top decks has the best matchups, but against a lot of fringe deck, you're kind of covered, because Garbotoxin can shut off a lot of like bullshit, like a Shock Lock or Valplume decks or whatever, and you can even put your Wobbuffet active turn 1 if you get it to slow down some decks. And you attack with evolutions. You have a lot of bench damage, so you can do better against like one price decks, like maybe Night March or like the T guys.
Mad Party,
Mad Party, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So in that way, you resist Colossal, which I think makes that a pretty good matchup as well, because they also rely on one prizes on the bench.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So it has some good matchups, but I think the loss to Dark for now is kind of scary.
Yeah, that's kind of always been Garbodor's thing, hasn't it? It's kind of just gate kept all of the weird fringe decks, like Garbodor plus, efficient attacker or whatever. So yeah, that makes sense that it's still doing the same in Expanded, but doing it just as well. Again, we're seeing, I guess, like we'll see with a lot of these, because VS Seekers in the format, you can really run a super low supporter count. Two Juniper, 2 N, and 1 Colress just as the 5 draw support. It's kind of crazy to me. But then you've got things like the Dedenne, Crobats, Lele, VS Seekers. So it's a lot of like supplementary supporter draw while still not having to commit.
I think you're gonna see that in a lot of decks. Like a lot of decks run like around 4 in combination Juniper N, and then maybe a Chorus and some utility supporters. Like for example, Ranger. You see like 1 to 2 Guzma, or maybe 1 Guzma, 1 boss if you really want to.
Yeah.
But just you don't need more than that in draw supporters, because you have a lot of good draw Pokemon, and you can play Tapu Lele as well. Like one important thing I also think is to be mindful of Wobbuffet, because I don't think this is the only deck that runs Wobbuffet. There will be probably a few more, and it's just very nice to have a Tapu Lele in your deck that even if your opponent opens Wobbuffet, you can still quick ball out your Lele and get going anyways.
Yeah, that's definitely good to remember.
Yeah, because otherwise, if you don't have Lele in your deck, you have very little outs. Turn 1, if your opponent just flips over Wobbuffet, it can be very difficult.
Is that typically why Wob's being run at the moment? Just basically to try and slow people's Crobat and Dedenne kind of explosions?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, makes sense.
Especially in this deck, it makes sense because the deck is kind of slow by itself. You're not attacking before turn 2, and then you're doing 130 and 50 spread. So you really need to slow them down, and it might also make them play more item cards, which is also what you want.
Yeah, makes sense. So yeah, this is another one that looks, pretty self-explanatory. We've all played Garbodor before, so
exactly.
That all kind of makes sense. There's another Pika list. Next up, this is the first dark list. This looks like it's. Oh, this is your list as well. This is
my list as well.
Two lists. I didn't even realize. So how different are your winning list and your 4th place list?
I think this is the same. No. Oh, yeah, this is the same. So I played 3 times. I got top 4 twice and first once. Before this, I played... let me think. I played 4 Versus Seeker, 1 Guzma. But 2 Guzma, 3 Versus Seekers, definitely the play. Yeah, and this deck is also pretty straightforward. It's basically the Dark-Eyed Dragons deck from, like, I don't know, 2016, 17 or something.
Yeah.
So yeah, with Double Dragon counting for 2 dark energies for Greninja, Zorax, Dark Pulse attack, like the damage ramps up like incredibly. It's insane how much damage you do.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I've had played the games against Colossal where I just at some point one hit KO Colossal for 420 damage.
That's crazy.
It is actually insane.
Yeah.
And because it is expanded, you can get the ADP in there. I think it's probably the best dragon Pokemon for this deck.
Yeah.
So you can run the cheeky ADP Guthala Tackle package.
Yeah.
With Tackle being also nice because it grabs your actual main attacker as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, obviously you want to go second and get that Altered Creation off turn 1. But even if you don't get it off, it's not always bad. You don't always have to go for it, especially if you see your opponent is playing Ranger in the deck. You can maybe try to delay the Altered Creation and just use the Double Dragon as damage buffs instead.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for the rest, I think it has the pretty standard Dark Box things. Darkrai EX for movement, which is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
2 Darkrai GX for extra energy in play. Around 4 Dark Patch, 3 Elixir. I think it's pretty standard.
Mm-hmm.
Dark Patch is more a secure way of getting energy in play, and Elixir can help early game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I play. I think a lot of people ask me about this. The one alternate cross map.
Yeah.
It's because I really like to have like a low risk dragon Pokemon on which I can stack some double dragon energies.
Yeah.
Because ADP can kind of be risky. It gives up 3 prizes, so you don't want to bench too many of them.
Yeah.
So I like having an alternative to that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think alternate crossma is the best one.
Mm-hmm.
It's also nice because yeah, so it also is a super cheap attack when your opponent is at 2 prizes, which sometimes happens.
Mm-hmm.
But also it attacks if your opponent has Garbodor in play or Wobbuffet active or there's a Cyanide Lab into play.
Yeah, okay, so you've just got a 1 energy kind of explosion just to
Yeah.
whatever. That makes a lot of sense, yeah.
Yeah, 1 energy, 170 is great because it knocks out Dedenne, knocks out Lele with the Fury Belt, or after ADP knocks out Crobat and a lot of other EXs.
Yeah, that's really good.
So damage is really good.
For sure. Other than that, so like I say, I think this is actually the only deck I've played anywhere near recently in Expanded. And the only like omission potentially I can see is whether there was any consideration for like a laser for Dead NGX at all, or whether you were just pretty happy on Altered Creation, or just either like you say early game just as soon as you can, or if you miss early game you just dodge and weave the Ranger for a while until it's going to be kind of awkward for them to play Ranger. So if they're playing Ranger, they're not maybe developing or anything like that. But yeah, the other card I've always kind of considered and somewhat expected to an extent is the laser. An extent is the laser. So any insight as to why you decided not to would be interesting.
Yeah, I think it's just because I didn't have space for it. Obviously, it's a great combo with Darkrai GX, but you want the Altered Creation most of the time, anyways.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So yeah, I didn't really feel the need to include it. It could improve some of your matchup. I think mainly it could be really good against Colossal. Yeah. But I think if you play that matchup correctly, you can win it anyways. Yeah. So I don't think you really need it. Like the nice thing I find about this deck is even if your opponent plays Ranger, like you said, they often have to like commit their turn to it. So say you're playing against the Colossal, which I had once, and they lay late for their Ranger, and then they played no other cards. They didn't attack for the turn. So then I just next turn got a free Ultimate Ray, and then you have so many energy into play that you might still roll the game anyways. And I think that's also the strength of the deck. Even if your opponent plays Ranger, they will have a slower turn, and your DDE will still stay in play, so the damage ramps up like incredibly. Like imagine after you Altered Creation, and you get 2 energy on your Greninja Zoroark, say, on turn 2. So you turn 1, you Altered Creation, turn 2, 2 energy on Greninja Zoroark. So then you're already doing 180 damage, because it's 30 from ADP, 30 base, and then 4 energies.
Yeah.
So that's already like crazy damage, and maybe you can already commit a second double dragon energy that increases by another 60, or you get a Darkrai GX into play. Like the damage ramps up incredibly fast, so you're 1 KOing tag teams left and right with this.
Yeah, that makes sense. It seems pretty scary, to be honest, how quickly that can ramp up for sure. Did you find yourself in a position, kind of, what ADP does right now, where it just looks to kind of boss a Dedenne and then boss something else for 3 prizes? Did you find yourself typically going down the like 3 prize route, or were you able to just go over their like tag team or VMAX or whatever and just churn through basically whatever's in front of you a lot of the time?
Yeah, I think most of the time I'm just able to KO whatever's in the active. Especially in the early turns, you usually don't really want to play Guzma. However, in some matchups, like especially Colossal, because that thing is huge and can get really defensive, then it can be really nice to Guzma around it. Or maybe in the end game, you need maybe you need 4 more prizes, you need to KO a tag team, or you only need 2 prizes, so you can pick off a 1 prize or a Dedenne off the bench or something. But I think usually you just try to go over anything that's in the active.
Makes sense. Were there any matchups that you were like particularly scared of or anything, or do you feel like this has a fairly safe sort of wide range of matchups? Maybe not super spiky in some ways, but it can play almost any game. It looks like the kind of deck that can play almost any game, in all fairness.
I think it's true most of the time. However, there's some it isn't the most versatile deck, so against some lock or control decks, you will have a worse time, I think. I think maybe you can beat Shock Lock, but I'm not sure. Like it's really hard because you only have 2 Guzma as you're like getting out of paralysis stuff.
Yeah.
And obviously the Vileplume, you don't have any outs for Vileplume in this list.
That makes sense, yeah.
Like the stop basics from attacking, so
yeah.
Yeah, those, I think you probably out to lose Vileplume, Rowegg, but for the best, I think the matchup spread is pretty good and should be winnable.
Nice.
And
I think this is kind of probably like the top of my list to play at the moment, just because, like I say, I feel familiar with it just from playing something similar in the past, well, a few months ago, but also, it looks, again, it's another deck that looks like it just does what it wants to be doing. It looks super consistent. It looks like it's like hyper aggressive, like you say. It can really, there's a lot of decks that kind of look for answers to the problem, but this deck looks like it just wants to be the problem the whole time and kind of force
exactly.
a lot of stuff out of your opponent to just barely keep up with the fact that you're doing, base 60 plus 30 for any dark energy you have in play. And like you say, when you've got dark patches, elixirs, Darkrai, double dragons, you're going to be getting huge amounts of damage.
Exactly.
Out of nowhere.
Yeah, I feel like this deck really embodies like the power spirit of Expanded. Like you're just trying to go really fast, abuse a few broken combos like Tackle, Guzhala, ADP, Double Dragon, and you just go fast. You churn out huge damage. You're drawing a lot of cards, especially in the early game. And you just go fast, win fast, or maybe sometimes lose. But
it looks like a lot of fun though, and I think this is, like I say, probably top of my list in all fairness.
It's loads of fun to play for sure.
It looks good, yeah. Next up, we actually have Colossal as the next step to take a brief look at. Obviously, Colossal hasn't done that much in Standard, but in Expanded, it feels like its toolkit is so much stronger.
I mean, just the Macargo is incredible. And then you have like the healing powers in Expanded, which makes the deck even more crazy.
For sure. You've got, it's actually doing crazy damage with Deances and strong energies as well. This deck is another deck that looks like it goes from, like you say, it can be very defensive, but also it's in Standard, it's basically always been a super defensive deck, but it looks like this could really, really put on a lot of pressure. In certain scenarios.
And I think, this this list doesn't even have all the options a Colossal deck has in it. Because let me find another list as well. Yeah, because this list is more of the Karina list, and they play Chaotic Swell, and let's see. Yeah, and they play only Muscle Band as their tool. But one of the big things you can also do, which I think is also very good, is you can run buff padding, which
Okay.
gives you like 50 more HP. I mean, this combo is also in standard,
Yeah.
but buff padding and a couple of stone energy makes it pretty much unkillable. And unkillable in expanded is great because you can just Acerola it, or you can max potion it.
Yeah.
It's really insane. So this card has a lot of staying power, and with smooth over Oranguru is really good. You don't have to fuck around with Rotom phones or anything. You just you can either put your energy on top of your deck with Magcargo, or even better, you can put whatever card you want on top with Magcargo, and then Oranguru the energy on top, and get the card you want to get with Magcargo.
That's really nice. That makes sense. Yeah, like I say, this deck it just looks like a complete different tier in expanded. It's so different. But yeah, it looks really strong. It looks like you say, it has those defensive options as well as kind of just that natural aggression between Diancie, strong energy. It looks pretty strong. What kind of decks, like you're saying, once you get a Colossal down, and if you do start applying some of these stone energies and defensive tools, it seems like you can't ever get through a Colossal VMAX. What kind of matchups is this deck worried about, other than, I guess, Turbo Dark that can reach over, and I guess Eggrow, grass type matchups in general may have grass attackers that can do a lot of damage to Colossal to break that huge health barrier. But is there anything in particular this is kind of worried about?
Yeah, so like regular Turbo Dark with Laser and Darkrai GX can obviously 1 KO it as well, which can be scary. Just looking through, like, I think it's very hard for a lot of other decks to 1 KO it, and I think that's kind of the strength.
Yeah, that makes sense. It looks like the kind of strategy also is, if you can get through one Colossal, essentially you're just going to have to try and take 3 prizes elsewhere, because you're probably not going to have the resources to get through 2 like 420 HP VMAXs that you have to one shot, because otherwise, like you said, they're going to Acerola or heal. So it looks like you're going to have to maybe knock out one and then focus on a Crobat and an Oranguru or a Magcargo, something like that, which looks, like you say, it looks like a very strong position to be in, because it means that second Colossal is probably even less likely to be going anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. I think honestly, probably the biggest danger for this deck is that it's not the fastest deck. It feels like more of a standard deck in how fast it gets set up. So like your goal is to have the Colossal up turn 2 and hitting, but you're not always going to get that, especially if you go first. I think it can be difficult to get it up and running, because you want your Colossal, you want your Magcargo. It's not always easy, even though the list we have now is very nice because it plays the right Slugma, so you can find both Colossal VMAX, Slugma, and Magcargo Heavy Ball, which is amazing.
That's great.
But yeah, it is kind of slow, so that's why you also see cards like Enhanced Hammer in here.
Just to try and level the playing field a bit.
Yeah, exactly. Especially against ADP decks, you don't want them to flood the board with energies, so you can E-Hammer some of them away. Maybe against Dragapult as well. Dragapult might also be a difficult matchup, I think, because of the resistance, and they can get rid of your Magcargos and stuff on the bench.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But yeah, this deck was pretty cool, to be honest.
It is really cool. I actually considered it for a while, but then I went back to Turbo Dark anyways. But it's fun to play, but it's a little bit slow to get set up, and because of that, it doesn't feel super consistent. But maybe that's just in comparison to the hyper consistent other decks in expanded.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, you can just compare the past couple of lists we looked at, and this one's got 1 Crobat for draw power, and you can see, if you're counting Karina as they're not draw supporters, but they're kind of like draw supporters.
Yeah,
you're actually.
Karina is not super amazing in expand, or not super fast. Like you get your Colossal and a Heavy Ball for something.
Yeah,
and then hope.
That's kind of that's kind of it.
Yeah, you hope it doesn't die then, and then maybe it still dies, and then you're in a bad position.
Yeah, so like you say, this looks like a very kind of reactive defensive deck, but if you can get into a position where, you know, like you say, you've got a Colossal with 1 or 2 Stone Energy on, maybe switching some of these counts around to maybe include something like a buff padding, it looks like
get your
really difficult to deal with.
Yeah,
and it's got the great Galarian Surf fetched as well for just, I would imagine, a random burst of damage. Things like strong energy just being, you know, around the field, being able to hoover all them up and just kind of blow something up. I like Galarian Surf fetched as a card, so yeah, it's pretty cool.
Pretty cool, yeah.
What's next? Next up we have, looks like there's another Turbo Dark List and then a Zacian deck. So obviously Zacian's another Pokemon that has access to both a patch and elixir. Yeah. So that's pretty cool. Outside of that, this list looks, you know, it looks like it doesn't have any tricks. It's Zacian being one of the best attackers of all time, being one of the best attackers of all time, basically.
Pretty much, yeah. So Zacian you obviously can also run with ADP. It also happens in Expanded, and I think that version is more focused on gusting stuff on the bench.
Okay.
Yeah, like you said, Zacian is just like really fucking amazing. This one also runs Ranger against ADP, which can be really good.
Okay.
Zacian hits. Yeah, Zacian hit really nice numbers on tag teams, especially because you have the 230 base, and then with Choice Band you hit up to 260, and then Dalmice is 270.
Oh, nice. So you're only not knocking out ADP, basically.
Well, you also see there's one Shrine of Punishment for that, especially.
Oh, broken.
Yeah.
Okay. So you can actually reach 280 on tag teams, and I would imagine you can do it with 4 Saucer, 4 Elixir. I would imagine it's not like out of the realms of possibility of doing that as early as turn 1, in all fairness.
Yeah, exactly. I think definitely after they altered creation, you should be able to do it.
Yeah.
Like whether they go first or second, then you should be able to knock out the ADP after that. Yeah, and I think the problem in Standard with Zacian is usually if you play straight, then you would like after one Zacian goes down, you don't have the resources to get a second one up. But with both Saucer and Elixir, you should be totally fine. You have the cheeky Aegislash in there against like I guess Mad Party or decks that run only special energy.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then you've got the Aegislash VMAX line as well. I guess that gets around a lot of the different locking variants because you've got an evolution in the VMAX, but you've also got the baby Aegislash, which just has like a
shred
style attack.
Yeah.
So that goes through pretty much everything else, right? I guess you need the VMAX for stuff like Pyroar and Vileplume, but other than that, Shred
exactly
stopping or basically halting almost everything else. So yeah, this looks like it's managed to fit in a lot of answers, and basically in the matchups where you don't need the answers, you're just super consistent Zacian. You've got access to elixirs and patches, and you've got, like you say, Choice Band plus Delmize who reach crazy high numbers. So yeah, this looks, I mean, I'm starting to get a vibe that outside of the control-y style decks and 1 or 2 tanky style decks, like you say, things like Colossal, a lot of the meta is just kind of various different ways of accelerating into some of these insane attackers and just trying to basically punch each other for huge amounts of damage based on different engines, which is pretty cool.
For sure.
It looks good.
Yeah, and it feels like sometimes in Standard, especially ADP Zacian, feels like it just goes by one game plan and you don't have to really think on your feet. But in Expanded, there are a lot of different situations you can encounter because there's so many different cards, and the cards are a lot better. But sequencing is also a lot more important, I feel like. So what do you compressor? Do you compressor the supporter? What attacker are you charging? Kind of that stuff. Do you play the Guzma or do you play the N? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that makes it does seem like there's naturally, with such a wider variety of cards in the card pool, you're going to have more one-offs, and therefore you're going to have more decisions based on when to use those one-offs. Especially less so for the supporters, like you say, just because you're VS Seeker, but things like your one Field Blower, your one Compressor, naturally your one Ace Spec. All of this stuff feels like it's going to be really important to know exactly when to use it to kind of leverage the biggest advantage especially as these decks all seem to be running quite similar engines and having similar game plans. So leveraging advantages seems more than ever super important with some of these one-offs. So yeah, I really like the like more and more I'm talking about it, I'm really looking forward to trying out Expanded this weekend. Or the end of this
I feel like also because of the recent bans, it's like compared to maybe 2 years ago when Zorak was everywhere, it's just you get locked out of the game on the first or second turn. But like in this format, I feel like usually you just get to play your game plan and you get to do what you want to do, and then one person gets to do it a little bit better and they win. Usually, there are few exceptions, but usually everybody gets to pull off their strategy.
That looks good though, and I think, well, like I say, it looks like a lot of the lists are just very much, I want to do this, you want to do that. Let's just both go at it and see what happens, which looks cool.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, maybe. Sorry,
I was just going to say, I think 8th place looks like it's a shock lock, interestingly.
Yes, I think so.
So this is the first kind of control-y style variant we're looking at. Obviously, as I've said, the card pool is way bigger. Typically that means the control card pool is also way bigger, and you'll see like some of the best control decks you've ever seen, I imagine, in Expanded, just because they can run basically all different plethoras of discarding energy, discarding trainers, discarding Pokemon, all sorts of this, that, and the other. So I'm not going to understand any of them, but I'm quite excited to look at some of these control lists just to try and gauge, especially before the tournament, gauge a bit of an understanding as to what some of their strategies are. This one is a bit similar because obviously this kind of deck has been around for 2 or 3 years now, but there's a couple of control lists that I'll hopefully we'll see lists for later on. I haven't actually looked at the full list, but hopefully we'll see lists for later on that you'll be able to shed some insight into what some of the strategies are, because I think it could be a little bit confusing just kind of looking at it from a complete outsider's perspective. You can kind of only just piece together where their win conditions are. It's like, I was saying this to Joe the other day, it's like a lot of Sanders lists at the moment. Them in CCG. It takes me like 5 minutes just to see, right, so we need to do this, the win condition is this, how do we get to this win condition with this variety of individual cards? But he always manages to do it. But yeah, that's what I feel like a lot of Expanded lists are going to be like. But this one is one of the most standard, or not standard, that's a bad word to use, but standard kind of Expanded lists in terms of control, because Shocklock has been about for years now. So basically,
I think there's so many different ways to build it. Yeah, I must say I haven't played against it, but this one seems pretty straightforward. So you just get Stoutland into the active to prevent your opponent from playing cards like Acerola, Guzma, Olympia, AZ, that kind of stuff. You play the 1/1 muck to get rid of your opponent's switches, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I think the Goodar says their tools don't work, so no, escape board.
No escape board, yeah, that looks like the big one.
And then obviously you're paralyzed with Raichu, and the Lillipup can get an item card from discard pile, so you can just recycle your scoop up nets every turn, and just Raichu every turn. I think that's pretty much it.
Flip coins or anything anymore.
Nope.
And yeah, honestly, outside of that, it looks pretty simple, to be honest. It looks like it does basically what he wants to do, like you say, just lock and paralyze, and hopefully I assume the win con is basically milling in almost all scenarios, just because
I think so, yeah.
Well, yeah, it definitely is by the looks of the energy count. But interesting, there's no like handiwork or anything like that, or even sort of surge combos. That's one thing that's quite interesting to me. There's no,
I think Surge is banned.
Oh, in Surge is banned. You're right. Okay, that makes sense as to why they're not playing it. But yeah, there's no win condition, so to speak. It's just kind of an out resource condition, I guess. Things like Palpad do shuffle cards back into the deck, same as Special Charge, and you can recycle them as pickup. So I guess inherently you are infinite, but it is interesting to me seeing no kind of handiwork or Mars or anything like that to get rid of any kind of resources. But I guess you don't need to if your opponent can't play anything anyway, as long as they are somewhat ahead of you in the deck out race, then you don't really need to be doing much. It does scare me a little bit, this kind of deck in best of one, just because I don't know how quick these types of decks are. Obviously, this one did well though, so it clearly does well in a kind of best of one scenario. But do you think there is ever reason to not play some of these control type archetypes in a best of one, or do you think because of PTCGO and kind of how aggressive they can be in terms of how controlling they are, there's no real risk to them in best of one compared to like standard best of one where we really don't have that many control tools, so it really is, you do have to play quickly.
Yeah, I mean, with the time limit you have, I think you should be able to finish games with control. So I think it's not too bad, but I think it's more like maybe the inconsistencies with like a deck like this.
Yeah.
It's probably going to bite you in the ass more with best of one, especially with these limitless tournaments, where sometimes you have to go. You play like 7 or 8 rounds. I think 7 max. I don't remember. But you have to go. You have to have like a really good performance.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to go X1.
Yeah.
And it can be really hard with control.
Yeah, especially like you say when this kind of control list is also an evolution-based control list. Some of the, whereas like compared to some of the more attacking decks that just run basics, even like something like a Colossal, which will be a bit more inconsistent than some of the basic decks, but even so, it's probably still a bit more consistent than this in certain scenarios. So yeah, I can see why that might be potentially a bit of a downside. But yeah, Shocklock is kind of tried and tested, and it's always done well. So yeah, that's
I really think Sander's list he played last time was really interesting. Do you remember that one?
I think I don't remember it off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure I will be able to find. Here it is.
It's with the greens and the Celebi as the Celebi Milotic as the only engine,
okay.
which is I think is really cool. So this assumes that most of the switch out your opponent plays will be Guzma and not much else. So your Celebi won't die, and even if it dies, you can have Rescue Scarf for one-time reuse.
Okay, yeah. So if they're so if they're Guzmaring, they're not killing the Celebi, and if they're not Guzmaring, they're probably stuck in paralysis. And that makes sense with a Rescue Scarf. Doesn't even hit the discard, so you can reuse it. Okay, this list is really cool. See, I knew Sander would do something crazy. I actually remember him sending this, and this was
it's so cool. And the Muck combo in there again, and Milotic, so you get to reuse whatever you want every turn. Seems really cool.
I like that a lot. Looks like he's done his classic Sander, many one-offs for certain situations.
Exactly.
But it works. Maybe I'll have to draw him on this list in the chat over the next couple of days in case I try to. I mean, I'm pretty sure I'm not going to play anything anywhere near close to this, but
I think this might be a bit of a stretch. Like, I also don't dare myself playing this kind of deck in Expanded. I think you really need a feel for it first. So play a lot of games on this on ladder if you had never played Shocklock before. I would imagine.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. But yeah, another. I mean, like we've said though, and it's another case of Shocklock kind of doing what it has always done, and it's been around here for a long time, and it's still evolving. So yeah, really cool to see, definitely.
Yeah.
Back to weekly number 14. I think the next archetype we haven't looked at is just Garchomp Giratina. Obviously, that won a regional back in whenever it was. I can't remember when it was. One of the first regionals this year for Expanded. We saw this kind of. Again, it looks like a really wacky list on the surface because there's many different one-offs, sort of playing Garchomp Giratina with a Coco engine. But it worked, and it worked really well. And it looks like the deck isn't all that different from back then, to be honest.
No, I think this is
gained a few things, but...
Yeah, this is basically abused DDE dot deck, right?
Yeah.
So you just, Garchomp Giratina's attack for DDE plus Colorado, so plus Coco. I guess you could still play the if you expect to go behind, but I guess you don't really with this deck. But otherwise, you could play like the counter gain bullshit. But I guess that doesn't really work in Expanded like it did in Standard a while back.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But yeah, and Roxy coughing and Zigzagoon means you just do 240 every turn, which is kind of busted.
Yeah, that makes.
And then you have the Noivern with to either blocking items or special energies and tools.
Yeah, that both of those attacks seem like they're very, very strong in very different scenarios. And then I
And
guess
Nagalord can
I was going to
take
say
2 prizes.
Is Nagalord just for the I'll take 2 prizes to finish the game kind of effect?
Yeah, I imagine so.
That makes a lot of sense. But yeah, it's another list that when you look at it from a distance, you're kind of like, what on earth is going on? But the more, if you start to pick it apart, it actually seems, like you say, pretty all in on just, Calamitous Slash 240 every turn, basically on whatever you want, because you have Roxy Coughing or Zigzagoon to choose exactly where you want that damage.
I
really,
think this
really
deck is
interesting list.
Yeah, I think this deck is really interesting. So it uses a lot of Battle Compressor, and I think it's actually a genius way to make the Roxy combo more consistent, because Roxy is kind of an inconsistent supporter.
Yeah.
Or used to be, but if you have Execute, it's always live for draw 6 cards, which is amazing. So even if you don't have the Coughing in hand, you can just Roxy the Execute and draw a bunch of cards by that, and you play 3 Battle Compressors, so those Executes will hit this card pretty quickly.
That makes sense, and it means you can run. I have noticed a lot of these lists are running less and less Ultra Ball and more Quick Ball, but it means you can actually run all 8, like a full 8 count of Ball Surge, which means you're going to be finding your Pokemon whenever you want them, which is great for stuff like you say, the Zigzagoons, the Coughings, that you actually don't really need in the deck. You just need them on specific turns, and then they've kind of served their purpose. So yeah, that all makes a lot of sense. Any idea why this list plays Coughing over Wheezing?
I guess because of Quick Ball.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. I think that makes sense.
But you could also run Wheezing, I guess. I mean, they probably also lists that run Wheezing.
It looks pretty good though. And again, like you say, it's just Double Dragon Energy is a great energy card. So let's find some of the best dragons they've ever printed and just really lean into them. So yeah, it doesn't look too different from the list back in the day that Justin Bakari won with, but it looks like another very, very solid deck. This looks a little bit more, not necessarily complex to play than something like Pikarom, but because there's a lot of damage counter, not manipulation, but I guess spreading, I can see it being maybe just a little bit more difficult to play than something like Pikarom, just because it looks like you say there's 3 compressors in here, which naturally means already there is a lot more decisions than a kind of Pikarom just dumping through.
Yeah, I feel like it's more like slower decisions. So in Pikarom and Dark, you would make more decisions about how fast are you gonna go, how fast will you be able to go, how do you increase your odds of hitting exactly the cards you need to ramp up these energies. And this is more like, okay, where do I spread my energies? What do I Battle Compressor? Where do I put the damage counters? Where do I touch my energy? Because this is also 1 energy per turn deck, except for the 1 time you can pop your Coco.
Yeah.
But that's also only one time.
Yeah, so you really need to kind of have a game plan. It feels like you say, some of these Dark and Lightning decks, you can really just be so aggressive. It kind of doesn't matter what your opponent's doing, as long as you can hit those energy, that kind of thing, because you're just going to be able to deal with whatever they're doing. Whereas a deck like this, it feels like it can pull off a lot of different things, but you do need to have that like 2 or 3 step game plan that you're ahead of.
You really, depending on what your opponent does.
It looks very reactive. It does look very reactive.
That's I think also why you see the 2 great catcher, trying to play off their bench and stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense. But I think it looks really, really cool. I think it it's a very unique deck that it feels like not quite as bricky as sort of like a Green Zard, but it feels like it has Green Zard style vibes, where you're kind of watching your opponent do stuff and then thinking, okay, let's see kind of what we can play off of that, and how can we best abuse this Calamitous Slash. So yeah, I like it a lot. Okay, I don't remember what's next. So a lot of similar stuff. Looks like there is a Toad deck at 15th place. Interesting to see.
I think I played them. I don't remember.
Let's have a little look. So this is Toad Garb with a single Trash Avalanche. Interesting.
Yeah, so I don't know. I must say I wasn't too impressed with how the deck was, but I guess Toad is Toad.
Yeah, I guess it's like you say, leaning into that
Mhm.
quaking punch.
Yeah. I mean, it's leaning into your opponent not having stuff and being able to lock them out of the game. But I think this is still kind of flawed because you will be able to do it to some decks. Like maybe this will, like some decks that need a few turns. But for example, if I'm playing Dark against this, right? Um, if I go second, I see all their hammers they're playing, but they're not even playing Flare Gun. So I'm just trying to get an Umbreon Darkrai into the active with as many energy in play as possible and just start
Yeah,
smacking.
yeah,
And
yeah,
then
yeah.
this deck will fall apart. I think same with Pika. If you just go up with one, if you get Pika in turn one, you just go up
Faultless
and
to
attack.
itself. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
interesting.
That's really hard for the deck. So I'm not too excited by this. I think it's also interesting they only run 4 DCE because you can play Twin Energy, obviously.
Oh, you can.
Um,
Ah.
so it could definitely increase the numbers, but I'm not sure if this is the best deck. I think Seismito is still the cheapest item locker,
Mhm.
um, but obviously you can use Vikavolt as well, which can have a way higher damage ceiling.
Yeah, that makes sense. Interesting to see Toad still at least seeing a little bit of play though, even like 7 years on, or whenever it was initially
Yeah,
released.
yeah.
Pretty interesting to see. Shows how strong that card really was even back then.
hmm
But yeah, like you say, this looks like basically lock and hammer spam, and hopefully that you can take 6 prizes basically before your opponent can get themselves back into the game, which feels like a little bit of a scary tactic considering how volatile Expanded can be. It feels like if you go second, sometimes they can do enough on turn 1 to kind of put them in a position where they can probably still do enough to start knocking stuff out, and if you go first, you can't attack, so or evolve into Garbodor, so you can't even really do anything, so they're going to get at least one free turn of all of their stuff plus supporters. So yeah, it feels a little bit interesting in terms of where like the kind of reasoning that they're playing some of those cards. But yeah, it makes sense that I mean, at the end of the day, item lock is item lock. So maybe that was just enough to get them through games and
Yeah.
make it through. Azul looks like he played Mad excuse me, Mad Party, which is pretty interesting. Obviously, another standard archetype that hasn't really seen too much success. In Expanded, though, you have a lot more exciting stuff. You have Compressor, you have Special Charge,
Marshadow GX.
Marshadow GX as well. So yeah, very, very interesting stuff. And
I mean,
again,
Mad Party is just Night March, but with 4 extra Pokemon.
yeah, is this just the new Night March? Is Night March completely kind of irrelevant nowadays? Is this just better?
Yeah, for sure. Like
That makes
this
sense.
just hits more damage, right?
Yeah.
So it's just essentially better than Night March.
Makes sense. And outside of that, it just looks like any old Night March list or any old, I guess, Tea Party list now. Mad Party basically taking that Night March shell and just shoving some new attackers. Obviously, they've had to find space for more Pokemon, which is a bit awkward. But in general, a lot of Duncan draw.
Puzzle of Time was
draw.
banned, right? So that's 4 cards.
Oh yeah. Puzzle was banned, so you've got plenty of stuff to be able to do. With Special Charge, you've still got enough energy. So yeah, it doesn't look.
And you see the Poltegeist with the 2 Sinisty, so you can still attack stuff like Vileplume and Pyroar.
Ah, okay, yeah. That's cool to be able to get around those without having to play anything kind of cute. You can just play, because you're also getting the draw engine from that as well if you are in sort of a real dire position. So yeah, that makes sense. But outside of that, everyone knows what Night March does. It's super heavy item kind of engine, very, very small support.
So this is not the heaviest item engine, but I think that's also because you need to run all the partiers. So I don't see Acrobike, which you maybe would have seen in Night March. And Dowsing Machine is quite interesting here, I have to say. But maybe because they play a lot of one-offs.
Yeah, typically
you'd see computer search.
Comp searches, just to grab things like DCE or to keep digging on that turn 1 to be able to, try and be aggressive and take some prizes before the game's even begun.
But I'm sure as well a good reason to use Dowsing Machine.
For sure. I mean, like you say, one of Special Charge, one of Great Catcher, one of Whistle, one of Parallel even. All of these cards can be very, very clutch in the right moments. And with the way the deck, dumps and draws with the Dene and Research, I can see it being important to be able to have access to some of those key
Yeah,
one-offs
exactly.
later on in the game. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I mean, Night March has always been pretty fun. It's kind of solitaire, but it's always been fun to see how much damage you can get on turn one. So this looks like it's just the same as that. How much damage can you get on turn one? But also you're managing to hit for weakness with stuff like Marshadow now as well on 2 of the biggest decks. So it's another deck that doesn't do great in Standard, but looks like it really gets a boost in Expanded.
For sure. Yeah, maybe one thing to go back to my deck. So Marshadow can be a challenge for the dark deck, but one thing to keep in mind is that ADP just one shots Marshadow.
Yeah.
So that's really good. So I think that's also one of the advantages with the dark deck, that ADP does really well against a lot of the fighting attackers. So it 1 KOs Marshadow. It's really good into Colossal because Colossal cannot 1 KO it, and it can 1 KO like literally every other Pokemon in your deck. But if you trade like a 150 attack into it, or you're able to KO something off the bench and just accelerate free energy into play, it's huge.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I guess.
And especially like the strategy against Colossal is that I try to not bench my Greninja Zoroark until I want to attack with it, because you usually be able to charge it in 1 turn.
Yeah, you can ADP a load of energy out and then just drop it, attach Dark Patch, and then just knock something out with it, and it's kind of it's got some value rather than just sitting on the bench waiting to be gusted up or whatever.
Right, exactly.
That makes sense. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I do like the look of not Night March, of Mad Party, I should say.
Same thing.
But yeah, they're essentially the same thing at this point. Another deck that looks like it's... Oh no, I'm missing out Snorlax. Let's have a look at Snorlax. This was the deck that I think coming into the Sword and Shield
Team
meta.
Fish Knuckles.
Yeah, TFK Josh. I think coming into the Sword and Shield meta, I think this was one of the decks that got the most hype. Just because Snorlax was like Zoroark's damage, but a better multiplier. You don't have the insane ability of trade, but you do have, like, basically at that point, Zoroark always struggled one-shotting stuff, whereas Snorlax really doesn't. You know, it's just got between Skyfield and just the natural damage upgrade. It just looks super strong. So yeah, it's cool to see Snorlax still doing well. Another card that has basically never seen the light of day in Standard, but looks like it could be a real threat in Expanded.
Yeah, so I think you have to hit the right matchups with this deck. It is very strong. I like running it with Chinchino in here, so it's you can get it out with Winona as well. It looks like a really cool engine, and it's less scary than having Zoroarks on the bench. But obviously Zoroark is a better attacker. But you really have to like hit your matchups. Like you've seen, I think a lot, like half of the decks play Sudowoodo. And this deck does play Muck to counter it, but you need to get your Muck into play before they get their Sudowoodo. Otherwise, it might still be a difficult thing. And like if they play Sudowoodo, you play down your Muck, they knock out your Muck. You still have to discard until you have 4.
Yeah.
So that can be a challenge, and obviously Marshadow can also be a challenge. So
I was going to say, it looks like it kind of gets caught in the crossfire of everyone playing fighting stuff just to deal with, you know, Pikarom and Zoro Ninja and stuff like that. It also gets caught in the crossfire of those two, which is a little bit awkward, but it's a little bit, even though it looks like it's still quite combo heavy and that kind of thing, it feels like it's a little bit more linear in terms of it's only got one attacker realistically. It's always going to be that Snorlax, which sometimes is a bad thing. Sometimes it means that you don't have the flexibility of different strategies, but sometimes it's a good thing because, you know, you're not kind of, do I do this here? Do I attach here? You know you're attaching. You know you're finding a Snorlax. You know you're finding a 3CE. You're attaching it, and you're just smacking for a whole load of damage. So I guess there's pros and cons. But yeah, again, the list looks pretty simple. Some interesting cards, like you say. The Winona engine is crazy good in my mind. Turn 1 grabbing like Snorlax double Mincino, into turn 2 grabbing Snorlax VMAX and double Cincino, and then starting drawing just passively every turn is crazy. Looks like there's also the AZ in here. Obviously 3C discards itself, so you can actually just pick up a Snorlax and heal.
No need to run Acerola.
I would imagine that's pretty nice in terms of being able to just, completely wipe off. This guy's pretty tanky at 340 for a lot of decks, so being able to just wipe off a lot of that damage seems pretty cool. But yeah, it does feel like it's kind of dodge and weave with this deck. You don't want to hit any of those fighting decks realistically, and also, like you say, Pseudo seems to be a fairly standard tech in a lot of these decks just naturally.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, and against things like Turbo Dark, it doesn't matter as much because they can put all of their energy onto a limited amount of targets, so that Pseudo isn't as scary. But against this, your damage is literally your bench Pokemon. So it definitely looks quite awkward in terms of being able to deal with Pseudo.
So in my Turbo Dark deck, I do play 2 Skyfield, but it's just basically for the first 2 or 3 turns that you just wanna Crobat Dedenne, Crobat usually, and you need the extra bench space to just get the Crobats and the Dedennes out, and then you just put some Dark GX into play, and then when they pseudo you or when they counter your Skyfield, it's totally fine. Just get rid of the Dennis, the Leles, the Crobats, and then you still have a solid field.
Yeah,
but it's just to accelerate the first turns.
Yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, pretty cool deck. I do like seeing all of these kind of expanded decks that were never really great standard decks, but with a bigger card pool, they can pull some cool stuff off. So yeah, it's nice to see this one.
I think the alternate Crossmat deck.
Yes,
should take a look at that.
That's an interesting one. Obviously, this was really popular when Cosmic Eclipse first came out. It looked like this was going to be one of the best decks in the format, to be honest. So still doing well. Clearly, there is definitely something there.
I think it's the best cheap deck, right? You also see this deck doesn't run any ace specs, probably because the person playing it didn't have the packs.
There's a life due down in the bottom.
Oh, there's a life due. Oh yeah, sorry.
But yeah, that's.
I think you still play Computer Search probably or Dowsing over it.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is basically the deck. It's really like it does one thing and it does it really well. There's actually like 2 variants. You can also run Trash Lunch in this if you want to.
Okay.
This is the more straight version. One Wobbuffet can be cute to stall your opponents. You obviously play the float zones already, and you play the treasures. So there's there's a pretty decent odds of hitting your Wobbuffet turn 1 to slow down your opponent. And in the early turns, you have Silent Lab, alternate Crossma, and then later you will have Garbotoxin, alternate Crossma. And the deck basically keeps itself up with teammates, which is amazing. Because teammates will just find your next alternate Crossma and the next energy. It's pretty good end proofing because you run the lucky eggs.
Yeah, I was going to say you can lucky egg something like a Necrozma or even a Garbodor so that it can't really be gusted and like knocked out. They have to like leave it there or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah, being able to just shove a lucky egg on a Necrozma and basically, end proof yourself seems very strong.
I think it's very interesting that this list doesn't run N. I think N would also be really good, but I see they run a heavy Guzhala engine, which is interesting.
I guess
Guzhala makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I guess it grabs you Silent Lab, DDA, and then probably a Float Zone to be able to switch into Ultra Necrozma, which makes sense. Yeah,
or the Lucky Egg if your hand is kind of mediocre.
Interesting.
Because that does sometimes happen with this deck because you don't run... like there are variants that run 1 Lele, but that will be all you see. No Crobats, no Deden.
Yeah. It's just basically 1 prizes and sometimes a Lele, I guess.
Yeah. Also, sometimes I like Trash Lunch in this deck because Trash Lunch just combos really well with Garbotoxin. Garbotoxin makes your opponent usually play more item cards, but the straight version you will see a lot as well. But yeah, this also... I think when I made my first draft of the Turbo Dark Dragons deck, this deck was also pretty big, so that's why I put alternate Crossma in. So if you face this deck, then they put down the Silent Lab, you can just go your own alternate Crossma and take a free prize, which is very cute.
That's really nice.
I
like it.
Yeah, this deck is it's simple, but still pretty powerful, I think.
Yeah, like you say, it doesn't look like it really fluctuates on its strategy, but just 170 consistently turn after turn on a 1 prize Pokemon is obviously very, very important.
Yeah, you have so much to recycle. You have your stretchers and
Got the
your
stretcher, got the
special charge.
charge, yeah.
Yeah,
And
so
then
you're just
and
going to
in
be
this
able to
list
do
a
it every
life dew
turn.
as well, I guess, to
Yeah.
make it so they have to take 7 the Crossmat knockouts or
Hmm.
7 knockouts in general. It's pretty cool. Yeah, it looks like you say, it looks simple but pretty effective at what it does. You can see the thick counts of, like you say, Guzhala, Tag Call, Treasure. Just turn 1, I want to be using 170 for 1. And that you know, I mean, that's one-shotting a Lele, that's one-shotting a Dedenne. That's nothing to sniff at in the late game, but even early game, it's two-shotting pretty much every. I think it's pretty much two-shotting almost every Pokemon in the game, right?
Yeah, I think
Outside
so
of,
too. And
you know,
even when
some of
it's
the
two
bigger guys.
shotting, it can be really annoying, right? If ADP just GXs with their DDE and you take away their DDE with the attack, that's huge.
Yeah. Oh, it discards an energy as well. That's I
Yeah. The
completely
energy,
forgot about
the
that.
attack is so insane.
That's nuts. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, this looks like another one that's very simple to pick up and play, but also just, like you say, good at what it does. So yeah, that's another one that maybe towards the top of the list in terms of things I want to try. There's only 2 or 3 more lists I want to look at on this in this tournament, and then there's 1 or 2 I want to look at in weekly 15. The first of which is next up we have. I just wanted to take a quick look at the Rowlet and the Roweg Vileplume list. Obviously, we've mentioned it a couple of times, but it looks like one of the strongest kind of locking archetypes out there. Just because Roweg has access to 2 different very, very annoying Vileplumes. And it looks like this is also playing a Decidueye line in here, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, so obviously both of the Vileplumes are really, really powerful. Here you also have again the advantage of the tech called Guzhala engine, which is absolutely broken because you get capture energy for your Oddish. So either you start your Row Egg, you start your Rowlet with 1 retreat, you start your Oddish with 1 retreat, and you capture energy for whatever you want, and then Jax or you use your evolution attack turn 1 and just get the thing you want.
Get whichever annoying stage 2 you want to put into play and kind of slow your opponent down. Yeah, this looks like another of those. It looks like one of the more simple control decks again, just because obviously a lot of it's supporter based, so there's not huge sort of decision making turns in terms of items naturally. You can only use 1 supporter per turn though, so that kind of increases the level of decision making you have to take. Just because you can only use 1 of these cards per turn, but you know, there's a plethora of different very annoying supporters in here. You've got AZ for reducing damage, you've got Fabbers, you've got a Flare Grunt. You know, it's just going to be an annoying deck to be dealing with. I would imagine, I've got to imagine Irritating Pollen is one of the earlier ones you look for, unless you've maybe been able to identify that your opponent doesn't have any answers, to either Decidueye or the other Vileplume. But in general, then just having that passive no items, I can see being really difficult to deal with. Whilst I would imagine at that point you're just slowly attaching to a Roweg and probably just hitting 150 and healing every turn and hoping that that's enough for you to get through.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think this deck has.
They're good.
Like turn 1 trainer lock is just so ridiculously good, especially when you go second, so your opponent doesn't get to play a supporter card even on turn 1. It can be really good, and the Disgusting Pollen ability is also really good. It's so good that so many decks are playing cards to get around it, like the Electrods, like the Poltergeist, that kind of stuff.
Definitely.
But even if so, like if you have both Irritating Pollen and Disgusting Pollen, like it's still very hard for them to get their answers.
Yeah, I mean, it shuts off like 60-70% of people's attackers and then items as well. So that looks like a very, very, very back-breaking combo. And then I guess in matchups where your opponent doesn't really play any single prizes, you can just throw a Decidueye down and basically you've got the game from there. If Disgusting Pollen isn't there, maybe they're, like you say, some of these VMAX decks
Yeah.
can get through the
Yeah, you
discussion
have to.
pond.
I don't think it's gonna the situation is too relevant. I'm not too sure because I feel like there's always either a single pricer or an old EX can also attack it.
Yeah, that's
Like
true.
Darkrai EX could attack it
Hmm.
because it only prevents Vs and GXs.
Yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, again, it looks pretty standard on what it wants to do. It wants to get out some of these annoying stage 2s, and then basically, you can see the 4 Sinlin. Now, these decks have a way of using VS Seeker in terms of Sinlin rather than VS Seeker to be able to recycle things like
Yeah,
Faber,
exactly.
Flare Grunt.
Exactly.
So yeah, it looks pretty annoying, but again, pretty consistent at what it does. And like you say, there's kind of no bad starter to this deck because you have 3 Pokemon that you can start. 2 of them have a 1 retreat, and you play 4 capture energy, so you can kind of always get the stage 2 that you want every turn. Or
Yeah, as long as you hit your
almost every
capture
game.
energy.
Yeah,
But you have
as long as
so many outs to that. Yeah.
Yeah, as long as you hit that capture energy. But like you say, you've got captures, you've got tag calls, you've got Raugers, Hallers, you've got the comp search.
Yeah,
It looks like
exactly.
it's pretty consistent to do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, looks pretty good. Looks pretty good.
I agree.
Just under that, it looks like we have a Hooper Dollstall. And this
Hooper
is one
Dollstall.
that looks very interesting to me because this is the kind of list that I can see it being a little bit more complicated to try and work out the win condition. This looks more like a Sander list because look at it; it takes up 5 rows of
Oh god.
5 rows of cards.
Yeah, this looks like an old Sunder list.
So yeah, this
like
looks
the
like
Lugia control. Yeah.
This looks like it's basically doing that kind of Lugia wall stall thing that we've seen in the past, where you've got 4 or 5 different stalling Pokemon for particular outcomes.
Yeah.
You've got certain things that stall EXs, abilities, GXs, all of that kind of stuff.
Plasma Snorlax is also an absolutely insane card.
Yes. Stopping retreating in a format like this is obviously pretty broken.
Like, say you play against my Dark deck and you get rid of all your other Pokemon and you counter catcher the Den, then I scoop.
Yep.
Right. You just have Snorlax in play against the Den, and then it's over.
Yep.
So a lot of tricks like that. It runs the 1 pseudo Wudo to get rid of stuff, as well as the Lugia. I think you want just run a few cards to get rid of your opponent's answers.
Yeah.
And then once you do, then you put your 1 walling Pokemon into the active, and then you just win.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like you say, you've got the Lugia, you've got the pseudo. You've even got things like Lucario, Melmetal, and Zamazenta to be able to, even if you can't completely wall them, you can at least just have something with huge HP and just reduce the amount of damage it's taking. You've got that 1 Goggles, so essentially a 290 HP Zamazenta, but more than that, even if they have to like go through and do it via multiple attacks, which you're going to try and make them do with things like Flare Grunt, Plumeria, all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, this is something that I would not touch for a long time, but it's good to kind of know what these decks look like, and like you say, it's good to identify that, okay, my opponent's probably going to try and deal with my 1 or 2 answers with things like Pseudo, Lugia.
Yeah.
And from
this just really reminds me of the old like Wailord Hoopa stall decks, right?
It does definitely.
It's really that idea. Just try to get rid of your opponent's answers and then stall for game. Yeah.
It looks like they've got there's now basically a Pokemon that can store for these kind of decks that can stall almost any type of Pokemon at this point. You've got GXs and EXs covered by Hooper, VMAXs covered by Zamazenta, abilities by Latias, and then evolution Pokemon in general by Pyroar. So the only thing that you're not dealing with is basic and V, like normal V Pokemon, and typically neither of those are particularly strong attackers. There'll be exceptions, things like Bolt and Zacian, obviously, but Dragapult.
Crobat is not awful.
Crobat's not awful, yeah, but typically, like regular Dragapult, when you've managed to maybe leave just a Luca Metal in the active, regular Dragapult's just going to be doing nothing to you. So it doesn't matter that you don't have a specific scenario for some of these. In general, you're covering so many other scenarios. In all fairness, you're probably
probably against
fine.
Like, you don't have a lot of recursion, it looks like, in this list. Like, you don't play heal,
No.
except for the one AZ, and you have the VS Seekers. But you don't play like Pal Pads or anything.
No, so maybe that's something to consider, like you say, just being able to loop some of these cards. I guess you have Bundlebee, but
Yeah.
you never like Bundlebee and Munchlax are never reliable
Oh,
enough
yeah,
for
yeah.
you to lean into too much. I don't feel. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna want something like
Bumblebee could be good enough. I feel like the Dragapult list we saw played like 8 energies.
that.
I think that might be on the low side, but I think you can definitely run them out of
Yeah,
so 7 energies so they cannot attack anymore, right?
yeah. That's definitely seems doable.
But yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it feels like we don't have a particular wall stalling kind of archetype like this in standard.
No.
I mean, maybe you could argue Luca Metal can, but that's still a very aggressive deck because it runs 4 Zeta.
Yeah, exactly. It's definitely not a stall deck for sure.
So it's interesting to see this kind of archetype still doing well in
Mm-hmm.
expanded. Never anyone's favorite, I guess, but there's so many tools for them to use. It's always going to happen in kind of a format like that. The last two I wanted to take a look at the first of which is this Mew Box deck that we saw do pretty well at another of the expanded regionals before the season was shortened. Obviously, Mew being able to copy V Pokemon with Dimension Valley means that you can spit shot. Essentially, I believe the backbone of the deck is basically spit shotting for a DCE every turn.
Yeah, exactly.
But
Being
on top
able
of
to
that,
play 7 DCEs.
Yeah, but on top of that, you've also got things like Double, Lugia, a variety of other attackers that you can also do cool stuff with.
Seismitoad even, yeah.
Toad, yeah. But yeah, I think the backbone was basically, like you say, Memories of Dawn, just copying some of these good attacks and being able to, run 7 DCEs because Mew is a one prize Pokemon, so you're just able to basically, do 160 every turn for very minimal downside. It doesn't matter that it's on a 50 HP basic. You're going to be getting knocked out, so you're happy to discard the energy.
Yeah, I really like this this deck. I think
It's very creative.
Looks really cool. Like the telescopic side is also seems insane.
Yeah, 160 is, I guess, perfect for the Denes, but the telescopic sight means you can jump up to Crobats and Lele's as well.
Crobats, Lele's, Darkrai EX, Zorora GX, whatever, all those kind of stuff.
Yeah, interesting to see no sort of zigzagging or anything just for being able to just deal with Lele's without needing the sight.
Yeah.
But outside of that, there was probably a reason for that. So outside of that, again, looks pretty consistent. It looks like it looks like it's a weird one where it looks like it's got very limited options in terms of basically you're probably always going to be looking to attack with Mew in most scenarios because you want to get value out of the Dimension Valley. But there's so many attacks you can use. That strategy is still very, very flexible in terms of what you want to be doing. You've got sniping, you've got a big double attack, you've got being able to do like a scalable attack with Lugia or just GX and put something in the Lost Zone. You've even got Metronome on Clefairy for being able to copy a random, strong attack that your opponent's used, that kind of thing. Being able to, just copy some weird attacks. You've got Seismitoad as well. So yeah, it looks very interesting for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think the only problem is that the base damage output to the active isn't that high. Like being able to snipe a lot is really good, but if they don't put down too many the Dens and Crobat and they just have a big boy in the active, then you might have a hard time. Like this probably doesn't do too well against Colossal, for example.
Yeah, that makes sense because they can just limit their bench. At that point, they probably don't even need to be running or going too heavy on like the Magcargos and stuff because you're still only taking one prize on them. And like you said, they're going to have a huge Pokemon that they're just going to be able to one-shot your Mew every turn. So yeah, I can see it being struggling with kind of like a tanking deck or whatever. Just really able to limit their bench. But yeah, outside of that, I think this is one of the most creative decks we've seen.
For sure.
To be honest, I really liked
the concept is super cool, and I think the execution is also really nice, except for like a few points here and there.
Yeah, but it feels like this is only, in my mind, this is also only kind of the more V Pokemon we get, this is only a strategy that's gonna get stronger and stronger realistically.
Yeah,
These kind of
exactly.
toolbox decks often do get stronger over time just because they gain more and more options.
Yeah,
So yeah,
Memories of Dawn, Dimension Valley is a really interesting combination.
yeah.
Like maybe if we got better VMons that attack for like colored energy, you could see including Prism energy or
Oh
stuff like that
yeah,
as well.
yeah. Because at the moment it looks like they've got the Cocoa energy to be able to, I
Mm.
guess, just
You can
attach.
Teferi in one turn against
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
ADP.
You can Keferi, you can power up a Cram in one turn, a Double in one turn. So you do
Yeah.
still have, like you say, options outside of the Mew. But yeah, I could see it becoming like a Prism energy kind of box. That would be really cool to see.
hmm Yeah, that's kind of what you see right now. I don't know if there's a list like that in here, but you see that with a lot of the Mewtwo decks in Expanded. That's pretty much a Prism box usually.
Okay, yeah, yeah. It looks like there actually isn't too many. Oh, there is one right down close to the bottom. I just want to scroll back up quickly because there was another deck I wanted to look at real quick before we get there.
hmm
This I just wanted to take a quick look at Cincino Control, just kind of out of
Yeah.
interest more than anything.
Yeah, maybe we
Um,
should, for the Mewtwo deck, maybe we should just look at another tournament where it did better and look
mhm.
at a list there.
So this looks very, very similar to old Cincino Control or Pidgeotto Control.
Yeah, this is Pidgeotto control, right? Yeah.
A couple of interesting inclusions that I'm going to have to read before properly looking at. What's this Magius do when you play it to
I think it's
evolve?
N, right?
Okay, yeah, yeah. So it's N. That's
For
pretty
your opponent.
interesting. Yeah, just one-sided
Okay.
N. Drone Rotom. Don't remember what that does at all. Okay, that's just a better hand scope. Interesting. Interesting. Okay.
Okay. Okay. Oh, that's like hand scope with a little bit of chip,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
not as good as chip, but pretty much.
Interestingly, not playing any chips at all.
That is true. That is true. Interesting.
Would be interested in that decision. But yeah, this looks like basically Pidgeotto Control,
Yeah.
just converted into Expanded, running a couple of one-of supporters that you couldn't run in Standard that obviously you would have if you could.
Yeah.
And yeah, other
You
than
run
that,
you run Bunnelby, no Oranguru? That's interesting.
Oranguru was Oranguru banned.
Oh, maybe Oranguru's banned. That might
Yeah,
be true. I
so I
don't know.
guess this is the new Oranguru. But yeah, it looks.
Bunnelby's still really, really good, of course.
Yeah, yeah. Give it also being able to be aggressive as well. You
hmm
can you can
Yeah, you
win
can
a
mill with it
turn
as well.
earlier.
Yeah. Like
Um,
you would include Bunnelby for sure, even if Oranguru
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah,
banned.
definitely, definitely. But yeah, it honestly it doesn't feel like there's too much to say about this list. I wanted to try to take a quick look to see how. Oh, Chip's banned. Okay, someone just said in chat Chip's banned. That makes
Okay,
sense
okay.
as to why the
Yeah,
drone
yeah, yeah.
is being played. But yeah, okay, this looks pretty similar to what we dealt with for like a year or so, though. So
Yeah.
it doesn't look too out of the blue. They're just wanting to
hmm
get a load of Cincinos, make do everywhere, and then basically get you into a hand lock and start milling you with things like Babella and Bryson Man, whilst burrowing and rotating good cards back into the deck. Also shuffles the
Yeah.
deck rather than putting them to
Yeah.
the bottom, which is
Put it on the
arguably
bottom.
better than Oranguru, which is cool.
hmm
But yeah, okay, cool. Nothing too crazy there. Just wanted to take a quick look to see whether there was anything missing. So I think that's basically all I wanted to look at for 14, and I don't think there'll be much different in 15. But there's two I can immediately see. The first is Pedro's second place list.
Yeah. Maybe can we maybe take like a quick break that I can get something to drink?
Yes, go and grab a drink. I am super interested in seeing this Zorro list.
It's very cool. It's very cool. I'm not used to talking this much. I really need something to drink.
Yeah, go for it. Looks like there is another Mewtwo list as well that we can take a look at. A water-based Mewtwo list. Ooh, with Deluge Blastoise. Interesting. This is like Archie Mewtwo.
And also, real quickly, gonna run to the bathroom.
Mm-hmm. A Wheezing spread list. This is Wheezing spread? I assume this is Wheezing spread. Yeah, look at this. 10 DCEs, let's go. What else do we have? Looks like this format is very, very different to Standard, which is cool. Nice to see a big difference. Okay. So this is the expanded. This is the Zoroark counters list. With Celebi V. It's pretty cool. Yeah, I'm pretty excited to play this expanded tournament on Friday. I think it's going to be a very cool thing to try out. Like I say, I haven't touched expanded in a long time, so looking forward to delving into some of the different decks. Look at the supporter count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 one-off supporters.
Alright, I'm back.
Alrighty. So I had a brief look at... there are a couple more lists we can take a look at in Limitless 15. But yeah, first off is Pedro's second place Zoroark list. Interesting that it's taken us this long to find a Zoroark list. Is Zoroark just kind of too slow at the moment?
I think it was just not a thing. Before Pedro brought it back, I think the output just wasn't there really anymore.
Okay.
Zoroark hits like the 8 bench, so 180.
180, yeah.
Yeah, so it's really hard to knock out tag teams and VMAXs, so that's just kind of bad. So I think with the tag teams, it just kind of took a back seat.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
I don't know who made this deck, but Pedro played it for sure. It's very interesting.
Yeah, definitely. It looks like it's like basically abusing counter energy, given that works on V Pokemon. Means you can use Line Force to be able to do a little bit more damage, but it's also on a basic, which is very important to note. It means you're not leaving your Zoroarks kind of exposed in the active.
And Grass type obviously countered the Colossal VMAX, which is pretty good. Otherwise, that would be a horrendous matchup.
Yeah, and then you've got Pseudo and Mimikyu, which both have kind of copying style attacks that work for counter energy. That's nice to see.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's
or choreo for the Mad Party, of course. And you have the nice Muck Lock to lock out the Sudowoodos of opponents are playing. Foul Play can also copy an attack of the old Zoroark, the old black and white Zoroark. Really cool to see.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty much it. So I think Zoroark is like the perfect deck for like a counter box, because you're probably giving up a prize turn 1 anyways. It's not going to be 2 prizes unless they take out your Lele. But your first turn is just going to be benching a whole bunch of like basic like Zoruas, Ditto, Grimer, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So it makes sense you'll be 1 prize behind, and counter will be like really, really good.
Yeah, makes sense. I do, like you say, I do worry a little bit about the deck's damage output. But I guess typically you really are going to have to look into taking probably 3 prizes with Mimikyu and or Sudowoodo, and then hoping things like Celebi and Zoroark can see you through, using maybe Guzmaring a couple of things on the bench for the last 3 prizes. Obviously, Mimikyu and Sudowoodo have great typing in terms of covering.
And Zoroark also covers Dragapult as well, which is also
yeah. And so and you've also got Celebi for. So I guess basically, you're hitting almost every type for weakness that's relevant, right? I guess you're not hitting Psychic type, but Mewtwo seems like it's also taken a bit of a back foot. So yeah, it looks like you're hitting a lot of the different relevant types of weakness. So there's your 3 prizes, and then I guess you're just trying to use something like a Celebi or a Zoroark, and that makes sense late game to try and close out the game. Looks pretty interesting.
So I think the one wrong problem with this is what also was what became clear in the finals is that Sudowoodo isn't the best Dark Box counter, in a way that you need 2 counter energies in play to be able to knock out a Zoro Ninja, because Watch and Learn copies the opponent's attack, right? And with Zoro Ninja and 1 counter energy, you would do 30 plus 60 because you have 2 Dark in play as the Zorak player, so you only do 90, so you don't want to KO them. So that's just kind of a bad trade. You really want to be KOing with the deck.
Yeah, so you need to establish one of those counters early, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
To be able to actually do good things with the pseudo. Feels like
so
if you can,
fortunately for me, Fedor wasn't able to do that, and or I was able to chase the counter energy with Guzmas and stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, it looks pretty interesting, and obviously we know with a deck like this, after sort of turn 2, turn 3, you're just gonna have so much draw power.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's incredible.
Interesting. I was going to say it's interesting. It's not playing Execute, but obviously Muck stops that, so that makes a lot of sense, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I say, you're going to have a lot of draw power. You're going to have basically access to probably almost your whole deck at all times from turn 3, 4 onwards. Which is great for finding counter energies as well, because that was often one of the problems with these kind of decks is you're all in on finding your 4 of, and if you don't hit it on that turn, you're already behind on prizes, so you need to be kind of bouncing back into the game. But with it, like you say, Zorak's the perfect kind of shell for a deck like that.
Especially with teammates as well.
Yeah, teammates, being able to just find the excess pieces that you need.
And I think this is also the perfect deck to actually use Ranger in the best way, because you're not going to be able to use it on your turn 1, turn 2, but after you set up 2 or 3 Zoraks, you're going to be able to use Ranger just fine, especially with 2 Tapu Lele in the deck, and still be able to dole out some good damage.
And still draw cards as well. It's not just you're not just giving up your supporter for the turn. You actually can still find your energy, stuff like that. So yeah, super interesting deck. I'm surprised. I think there was a couple on the other Limitless Weekly, but obviously they were a bit lower down. So I'm surprised it's taken this long for us to find a successful Zoroark list.
Yeah.
But maybe it has just been outscaled at this point.
I think it has been outscaled, and it lost some of its most important tools. Right, the Puzzle of Time is gone. The Hex Maniac which was insane in this deck. Also gone, so I think it's a combination of that.
I know a lot of sort of turbo Zoroark list as well probably didn't like Shaman going because they weren't able to do a huge amount on turn 1 or 2. So yeah, the bans probably hurt it as well. That makes sense. Third place was a Malamar VMAX Electrode list, which is again 2 cards that never really saw any play in Standard.
So this was a doozy to play against. This is annoying. Because this is basically like a handlock deck, right? The Malamar VMAX. Let me read it again. It takes out a card from your opponent's hand that you get to choose.
Okay, so it's targeted kind of handlock.
And then you combine it with Ace Trainer and or N. So, I mean, you just on turn 2 you blow up, you Ace Trainer your opponent with 3 cards and take out the best card in their hand.
Yep.
And win from there. That's pretty much it.
That looks pretty annoying. Obviously, it doesn't really... Malamar has grass weakness, so it doesn't really get crossfired in as much as some of these fighting weak dark Pokemon. Obviously, still grass is hitting Colossal, so you're still kind of in the crossfire, but a much better weakness to have. Really interesting, like you say, synergy between Electrode into Ace Trainer, because Malamar is a 3 prizer anyway, so if you set up 2 Malamars, you're still making your opponent take 8 prizes if you don't bench. Obviously, there's a lot of Pokemon you do probably end up benching anyway, but even so, you can actually force your opponent to take 8 prizes, probably consistently if you want them to.
Or at least 7.
Yeah, definitely. So, the deck looks really interesting. It looks, like you say, like you said about a couple of these decks, it does look like the strategy is fairly linear. But other than that, excuse me, it looks pretty annoying to deal with. And like you say, if they Ace Trainer you into top deck mode and you can't get out of top deck, The Malamar applying 180 a turn, I would imagine can rack up pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Still two-shotting stuff, but at the same time, you only need to two-shot a couple of things before the game's over. And yeah, you can one-shot things like the Dene and Crobat and Lele. So I would imagine it could actually go from not really having much of a board to all of a sudden being like 2 or 3 turns away from game, kind of out of nowhere.
Yeah. So I think this deck is just really good unless your opponent like completely pops off, right? If a Dark deck gets to go, let's say Dark gets to go first and has 5-6 energy in play turn 2, then Malamar is gonna have trouble. If Pikarom gets the turn 1 full blitz, then Malamar is gonna have some problems, right? But otherwise, if your opponent doesn't hit amazing, then this deck can really go off and have some really, really strong matchups.
Yeah.
Wondrous Labyrinth can also be really annoying in it, I can imagine.
Definitely. It looks like, typically though, it doesn't seem to have an answer to kind of on-board draw. So I guess that's another thing that can kind of scupper it a little bit. If you're... Obviously, you can probably...
It does have Muck, right?
Oh, yeah, so it doesn't have... it does have Muck in terms of being able to stop things like the Dene and stuff, but I guess things like Cinccino's and Zoroarks that get set up are going to be able to draw out of this, but that's... It looks like, from what we've seen, that those kind of draw engines are a lot more niche, and generally
true.
A lot
And the Muck is
item draw.
Yeah, and the Muck is kind of an afterthought in this list because you only see the Ditto to evolve into it, and sometimes the Ditto needs to evolve into Electro GX, so you can't always get the Muck out.
That makes sense.
And then there's a lot more options, of course. Yeah.
But yeah, it looks pretty cool. Nice to see. Again, another 2 cards that never really saw standard success. Performing well in Expanded is pretty cool. There's a second Zoroark list I wanted to take a quick look at in 11th place to see how similar this one is. This looks a lot more focused. Okay, so this is more like a chess style list. Kind of going for Stinger GX into, I would imagine, looking to Super Fang plus Hypnotoxic Laser on a VMAX or a 3 prize of the turn after, which makes a lot of sense. Obviously, there's no 3 prizes.
What does Nihiligo do again?
In the Nihiligo poisons, I think, so it's like a second laser.
Okay, sure, yeah.
You've also got Shrine, which is really cool. Okay, so this deck has, like, obviously we saw Checkmate style decks in Standard, but they didn't really have a great finisher. A lot of the time, the Checkmate decks in Standard had to hit a tag team, then Stinger, and then hit the tag team again for game. Whereas this, it looks like basically you have 3 ways of, as long as you can find the Raticate, you have 3 ways of being able to just one-shot any 3 prize Pokemon the turn after you Stinger, which is very, very strong, to be honest.
Yeah, I think I actually saw Pedro like a few days after the last limited tournament streaming just straight Zoroark Raticate, which also could be strong. I feel like you probably need a few tricks against one prize decks like Mad Party, but otherwise like Raticate Lasers is a pretty good combo, especially because you can just triple XL it right now.
Yeah, triple XL seems very strong, and like you say, it means that you're not worrying about some of these big sort of tanky VMAXs like Colossal VMAX, but also even just super fanging like an ADP after the Vaulted Creation is probably puts you so far ahead. Yes, you're almost certainly going to be losing prizes in terms of the turns after, but you've got to think that if you're leaning into that kind of strategy, being able to KO the ADP is going to be very, very strong. How consistent that is, I don't know, because obviously you're a multiple stage 1s deck, and inherently they're not the most consistent, as we've said in the stream so far, but
it's Zoroark, right? So
it's Zoroark.
That increases risk so much.
Yeah, it feels like it has that inherent boost just from one of those stage 1s being such a good consistency card. So yeah, these, I mean, it's been so long since I've played Zoroark, so I'm kind of always going to be drawn towards these kind of archetypes anyway. But yeah, this looks really interesting, and it's cool to see Checkmate kind of reborn in a way that's not super all-in on hit a Pikarom, Stinger, and Prey. This time it's, Stinger at some point in the game, and then basically find your 1 of 3 outs plus your Raticate to be able to just win the game next turn, which is very, very strong. I like it. I like it a lot.
Very interesting. Yeah, I think you might see some Raticates or at least some more Zoroark decks in the next tournament.
That's another control list. Here's the Mewtwo list. So 20th place was a Mewtwo list. And this was a water-based Mewtwo list. Looks like it's playing
very interesting.
Archie Stoice as the energy acceleration. This is kind of like the very first Mewtwo lists that came out of when Mewtwo came out that came out in Expanded. This is kind of like some of those. There was kind of two trains of thought, I think, for Mewtwo at the time. It was Deluge Blastoise, and then like we said, the Prism Energy kind of Despair Race style.
Yeah.
Just big box decks. Looks like this one, as we've said, is more focused on Archie, and then a plethora of different water-based attackers that Mewtwo can copy to try and basically deal with whatever situation, whatever Pokemon is in front of it, which looks pretty cool. SBDO for some damage counter placement, Palkia to reset things like Darkrai and Picrom's energy counts is crazy strong. Blastoise and Kingdra, well, Blastoise being a big blow-up attack and Kingdra being spread is really cool. And then you've also got the Articuno, which I would imagine is great against Mad Party, because obviously this Articuno takes extra prizes against anything it knocks out, and it's got a fairly good attack in those kind of one-prize matchups. So this looks like it's got a lot of answers, but it's an
SPDO is such an insane GX attack.
SPDO is like one of the best GX attacks I think was ever printed. It's crazy.
So insane, yeah.
And then in combination with then just being able to basically scale your damage to wherever, that's obviously very strong.
Yeah, I think Mewtwo is very smart in this deck because I think we've also seen Archie Stoice play Kingdra GX without Mewtwo, so you need to Archie the Kingdra out as well, which is still an option in this version, but it's just better if Mewtwo gets to copy it, right?
Yeah, you don't need it's so much more consistent in terms of actually being able to use that GX attack if you need to.
Yeah, the Hydro Pump attack of Kingdra is also super, super good.
Yeah.
Yeah, otherwise I think it's just pretty much all in on the Archie. I think you went over some new Archie stuff with the, what's it called, the mustard.
Yeah. Right? Unfortunately, there's not enough. Basically we don't have battle compressor in standard, so that's the big issue. But I mean, you can see that just comparing the Archie package to the mustard package, just looking at like the support that Archie has, Ultra Ball, Compressor, even Energy Retrieval isn't technically an Archie card, but it can discard 2 from hand, which is kind of exactly what you need sometimes. You know, it's just crazy how much support this has. So it's cool to see Archie kind of being reborn in this way. Interesting, again, it's another deck that I expected we'd see quicker than, on the second page of kind of results. Why do you think? Do you think Mewtwo's dropped off, or do you think it just hasn't seen much play in general? I know, obviously, Dragapult seems like quite a scary matchup, but it seems like with this array of attackers, you probably have answers for a lot of other decks. So, why do you think maybe we're not seeing too much Mewtwo at the moment?
That's a good question. I actually, where is it? I was looking around a little bit at other expanded tournaments, and I thought I saw one where Mewtwo did really well. I can't remember.
I mean, I must admit, we are looking at a fairly small sample size, so it could just be that people haven't been playing Mewtwo in these tournaments, but in general, I don't know. Maybe it's still it still gets hurt by some of the ability luck, like Garbodor, Silent Lab, not Wobbuffet, but that kind of stuff. So maybe it's hurt a little bit by that. Shuts down a lot of the. Like, it doesn't shut down Mewtwo, but a lot of
Blastoise
doesn't work, Crobat doesn't work. So a lot of the other stuff, I guess, doesn't work under Mewtwo under.
And Blastoise, of course, but I mean, then the Wobbuffet's probably out of the active, but so maybe it's that. Otherwise, I think maybe the other Mewtwo deck is not too exciting. I feel like there might be some other decks who do it a little bit better. Yeah. Like the Mewtwo Prism deck. It can be good. It does have some stuff, a lot of variety, but it usually doesn't run energy acceleration, so it's just down to one attachment per turn and just trying to copy really broken attacks. Yeah, so I don't know.
Makes
Maybe
sense.
it's that.
But yeah, pretty interesting list. Let me go back here. What else did we have? So that was the Mewtwo deck in 20th. I think in all fairness, I think we've covered a lot of the archetypes.
I think so too. Yeah.
In general, yeah, it looks like it. There's a couple lower down things like Center Scorch and Wheezing. There's an Eternatus down there, but in general, I think we've covered a lot of the big ones. So yeah, I mean I'm really excited to play this this weekend. I'm gonna have a think tomorrow about what I want to play and probably test tomorrow evening if I can. Potentially. But yeah, thanks for hopping on with me. It's been super insightful. I've learned a lot about a format in a very short amount of time, so I think it can only be useful in terms of how the tournament goes on Friday. Feel free to give yourself a bit of a shout out. Obviously, Bert is a fantastic player and a teammate of mine, so always good to hear some insight from himself. So let people know where they can find you, I guess.
Yeah. Always glad to help. I hope you'll do well, or just at least enjoy the format, because I think it's a very different experience from the standard that we're playing, and I think a positive difference. I think it's really balanced, and you've seen tonight by like the huge amount of decks we went through. There's a lot of diversity, and every deck can do something. Every deck can win. So yeah, I think it's a pretty healthy format in its own way, even though it's very fast and there are some like ridiculous combos in there. I think it's still really cool. Yeah. Otherwise, you can follow me at Bert Wolters TCG on Twitter, and otherwise I don't really stream, so that's it.
Make sure you go and check out Bert on Twitter though. Often some great insight over there. I'm gonna call the stream there as well though, because I want to have a think about what I want to play, and I've got some stuff to do tonight. So thank you very much for all tuning in. Let's see who we can raid. But yeah, thanks for tuning in to hear me and Bert chat about some Expanded, and thanks for hopping on with me, Bert. I really appreciate.
Of course. I hope
giving me some insight.
I hope people in chat also enjoyed.
Let's head over to Rahul, since he gave us a sub earlier on. Nice. Alrighty. Yeah, thanks for watching, everybody. I may end up sticking this on YouTube as well, so if you want to go back and kind of hear about some of the thoughts that we've had, obviously there's a lot of expanded tournaments you can play in over on Limitless as well. So maybe you'll find an expanded tournament to try out as well. But yeah, thanks for watching, everyone.
It's a lot of fun to try it out if you have the cards.
Definitely. I think I'm really looking forward. Like you said, it's very different to the standard that we're playing at the moment. So it's going to be cool to try out in terms of a new format that, like I say, I haven't touched for so long. It'll be really cool to see how things are, I guess, over there.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's go head over to Rahul, and I will see you all hopefully either tomorrow or Friday in terms of streaming. But yeah, thanks everyone.